You've probably heard the concept that cancer is a genetic disease. It's the idea that if somebody in your family has had cancer, you are at increased risk of getting it because it's in your genes. The genetic theory of cancer, also known as the somatic mutations theory, is taught to doctors and medical practitioners as if it were fact. But in reality, it's just a theory, which means it's unproven. Today we're going to put that theory to the test and find out once and for all if cancer is a disease of genetic origin. As American Nobel Prize winner Peyton Rouse said in 1959, the somatic mutation theory acts as a tranquilizer to those who believe in it. This presentation I have titled, Is Cancer Genetic? Before we get started, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on iTunes. If you're listening to us on any other podcast network, Player FM, Google Play, Stitcher, we're on all these. So if you haven't already, subscribe on those. And if you could subscribe on iTunes, that would be great. And if you could do us one more, by leaving a review of the show on iTunes, that would help the show tremendously. I've created a link. Just go to EndAllDisease.com/iTunes. Inspiration for this presentation. As many of you know, when I was 12 years old, my mother died of cancer. We will all face adversity in our lives. The result of that adversity depends on our reactions to it. 20 years after my mom's death, I finally realized that her death was not a tragedy, but an opportunity. In fact, perhaps one of my greatest opportunities in my entire life. My mother gave me a story to tell that could inspire others and a mind that could solve the problems the world was literally dying to know. Instead of letting it destroy me, I used the pain inside me as motivation to research and write books on cancer so that no child would have to go through what I did ever again. As the late Buckminster Fuller once said, don't fight forces, use them. This presentation is based on research from the book Cancer, the Metabolic Disease Unraveled by yours truly. I'll give you a link at the end of the show if you want to pick this one up. The somatic mutations theory of cancer. The official position of the cancer establishment is that cancer is a genetic disease whereby a specific set of gene mutations cause a single cell to turn irreversibly cancerous and multiply out of control until enough of its mutant clones collectively form a tumor that strives to kill the host. So take your pick. I've got a whole bunch of different villains on the screen, from Wolfman, Bin Laden, Frankenstein right next to Darth Vader. If this somatic mutations theory is correct, or according to it, the cancer cell is some kind of monster entirely foreign to the body that's in there trying to kill you, kind of like Pac-Man, a Pac-Man cell that's trying to just destroy everything in its path. If this theory is correct, it means that cancer cells are like parasites that must be eradicated at all costs, even if patients are injured or nearly killed in the process. It's this notion, the idea that a cancer cell is some kind of monster, which I call the angry cancer cell, that justifies the use of knives, poison injections, and ionizing radiation on cancer patients. On the screen I've got an assortment of scalpels. So of course we know when someone has a tumor, you got to cut that thing out, right? Well, knives are used as weapons of war on battlefields to kill enemy soldiers. Chemotherapy, of course, the very first chemotherapeutic agent utilized first on mice, then in people in 1946 was a derivative of the chemical weapon mustard gas, which literally makes the skin bubble up and slough right off the body. We also got a photo of a classic looking nuclear bomb on the screen, and the same radiation that's emitted by a nuclear bomb that makes it so devastating is ionizing radiation. And that's the same ionizing radiation that's directed at tumors when patients undergo radiotherapy. If it weren't for the fear driven into patients by doctors, telling them that they're going to die if they aren't rushed into treatment, most people would probably never accept these treatments. Questioning the genetic theory of cancer. If cancer really is some kind of monster, entirely foreign to the body and living inside us, then we're probably doing the right thing by trying to kill the cells during treatment. However, if cancer is not a murderous mutant cell, and these treatments are making the health of patients worse, then we need to know so that we can stop using them. It's time to question the genetic theory of cancer to find out for certain. In search of another paradigm that could adequately explain the underlying cause of cancer and why the war on cancer has been such a failure, I stumbled upon a fascinating series of studies that completely contradicted the genetic theory of cancer. If cancer were a disease of genetic origin, then none of the following observations would have occurred. Clone mice from tumor cell DNA. In 2003, a group of scientists from St. Jude Children's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, took cells from mouse brain tumors and then cloned a mouse using the DNA contained within that tumor cell to see if the cloned mouse would harbor cancer or be all messed up. The results? The study was published in the journal Cancer Research, and what they found was that the cloned brain cancer cells directed normal development in the mice, both pre and post implantation. So they took mutant DNA from a mouse brain tumor cell, cloned another mouse from it, and that mutant DNA directed normal development in those cells. That completely contradicts the somatic mutations theory of cancer. Frog egg tumor transplants. This is the next study. In 1969, a group of researchers injected tumor cells from tadpoles into frog eggs to find out the condition of the tadpoles that would emerge from those frog eggs. Of course, after the tumor cells were transplanted, the eggs contained the mutant cancer cell DNA. So the question is, were the tadpoles that emerged cancer-ridden or not? If the somatic mutations theory is correct, they would have to be. The results of the study were as follows. From within the eggs emerged healthy swimming tadpoles, demonstrating once again that mutated cancer DNA can direct normal development. Harry Rubin, Professor Emeritus of Cell and Developmental Biology from the University of California. Look at this guy. If you're watching the video, you can see him on the screen just smiling away. This is what happens when you live a life of adventure and scientific discovery. Anyway, Harry Rubin demonstrated in 2006 that cells can have hundreds of mutations and still behave normally within the organism. The study reports, and I quote, "The use of a reporter gene in transgenic mice indicates that there are many local mutations and large genomic rearrangements per somatic cell that accumulate with age at different rates per organ," and here's the key, "and without visible side effects." You can have hundreds of mutations in your cells and there'll be no symptoms from that. The cell function will be normal. Not only does this fly in the face of the somatic mutation theory of cancer, this flies in the face of the popular dogmatic idea that the genetics of a cell are important at all for cellular function. They don't seem to direct cell behavior whatsoever if you can have hundreds that are mutated and the cell still functions normally. And one more fascinating study, cell cytoplasm-swapped CYBRIDS. What is a CYBRID? Since the 1970s, scientists have been experimenting with swapping normal cell cytoplasms. So if you aren't aware, a cytoplasm is a part of the cell which contains the energy-producing mitochondria, not the DNA. And the study was about taking the cytoplasm from a cancer cell and putting that into a healthy cell and seeing what happens. And conversely, taking the cytoplasm from a cancer cell and putting that in a healthy cell and seeing what happens to that healthy cell. Anyway, the resultant cell that has the cytoplasm swapped is called a CYBRID, which stands for cytoplasm hybrid. So when scientists transplanted normal cell cytoplasms into cancer cells, so a cancer cell obviously has the mutated genetics, and you put a normal healthy cell cytoplasm containing the mitochondria in that tumor cell, what happened to it? Well, in this study, the cancer cells transformed back into normal, healthy, functioning cells. So not only does that fly in the face of the somatic mutations theory, that the genetics have nothing to do with a cancer cell or a cell becoming cancerous, but it also suggests that a cancer cell is completely reversible without the need to attack it in any way with knives, poisons, or radiation. You can turn a cancer cell back to a normal cell by putting a healthy cell mitochondria within that cell. And when cancer cell cytoplasms were conversely transplanted into normal cells with normal DNA, yet cancerous mitochondria, the cells turned into cancer cells. So what these findings show is that mutant cancer cell DNA does not cause cancer, and that it's the mitochondria that appears to dictate carcinogenesis. Solving the controversy. What better way to resolve the controversies surrounding cancer's origins than with the biggest and most comprehensive scientific investigation into cancer genetics ever conducted? The Cancer Genome Atlas Project. In 2005, the National Cancer Institute launched a giant multinational initiative called the Cancer Genome Atlas Project. The short form for the Cancer Genome Atlas Project is TCGAP. The goal of the project was to expand human understanding of cancer genetics and to pinpoint a common sequence of genetic mutations that drive carcinogenesis so that new drugs targeting each mutation could be developed. So there are allegedly dozens of different types of cancer, but the idea was that or the theory behind this is that there will be a specific sequence of genetic mutations that must occur for each type of cancer. So for example, you take prostate cancer, let's say. The theory was that there would be a specific sequence of genetic mutations that must occur. This one must be mutated, this gene must be mutated, and this gene must be mutated. And when those three things happen, you get prostate cancer in a cell. So that was the theory. And then if that was the case, you could have a different drug. The pharmaceutical industry could develop a different drug to switch on or off those genes, which would in turn, in theory, cure that disease. If there ever were a project that could finally either prove or disprove cancer as a genetic disease, this billion-dollar medical behemoth spanning more than a decade was it. And by the way, this project is still underway, although the results of what has been found in 2010 pretty much sealed the deal. Lightning-fast genomic sequencing. As you can imagine, the debut of the project spurred enormous excitement and hope among its many participants and supporters. One of the greatest successes of the Cancer Genome Atlas project has been the accelerated speed at which scientists are able to fully sequence the genetic code of a cell. Each cell in our bodies is said to contain around 25,000 genes, and using state-of-the-art technology, scientists are now able to churn out the entire genomic sequence of a cell with lightning speed. To date, TCGAP has compiled data from more than 10,000 tissue samples from over 30 different types of cancer. But as far as the origins of cancer are concerned, the results of the project to many of its supporters have been disappointing or even downright shocking. Here are some of the main discoveries about cancer cell genetics. Here are three big ones. Looking at cells from different people with the same type of tumor, scientists discovered the mutational signatures of cells were so immensely different that they appeared to occur completely at random. Next, scientists looked at different cells of the same tumor. So on the same person, you take multiple samples from that tumor and you sequence the genetic code and compare it to see what it's like. And what scientists found was that instead of finding a distinct series of mutations that could explain carcinogenesis, every single cell was found to have its own unique set of mutations. Scientists also looked at metastatic cancer cells, sequenced the genomes, and compared those with the genomic sequence of the tumor cells from which the metastatic cells broke free. So a metastatic cell, if you're unaware, is a cell that has broken free from the original tumor, is floating through the bloodstream, and is trying to colonize elsewhere in the body at distal organs and locations. And what researchers found was that their genetic defects were completely different than the genetic defects in cells of the original tumor. Time and time again, the story was the same. Not a single mutation or any combination of mutations were found to be absolutely responsible for initiating the disease. Results of the Cancer Genome Atlas project. In 2010, researchers from the University of Washington called the results of the TCGAP project sobering and conceded it's becoming increasingly difficult to envision how it will be possible to develop a realistic number of targeted chemotherapies to be directed against a discrete panel of commonly mutated cancer genes. Dr. David Agus of the University of California, the oncologist who treated Steve Jobs, even suggested in a recent speech that cancer is simply too difficult to understand and that we should stop trying. Sorry, Dr. Agus, it's not going to happen. The multi-billion-dollar Cancer Genome Atlas project, a fascinating milestone in the history of cancer research, has taught us many remarkable things about cancer genetics and confirmed to us unequivocally that above all, cancer is not a genetic disease. After the 2010 results of TCGAP, the 81-year-old father of DNA himself, James Watson, responded publicly by recommending a shift in the focus of cancer research from genetics to metabolism. If you enjoyed this presentation and want to support my work, check out our line of red light therapy devices. We've got the handheld device, the Body Light Mini, and the full body light for the ultimate red light therapy experience. Those can be found at EndAllDisease.com/store. Also, the book from which this information came, if you want to learn more about cancer, is called Cancer, the Metabolic Disease Unraveled. I've also written The Cancer Industry and Red Light Therapy Miracle Medicine, all three of which can be found at EndAllDisease.com/books. And of course, if you want to look at the show notes and to sign up to our mailing list, go to EndAllDisease.com/episode 11. Also, if you enjoyed this presentation, please share it with someone you love. As always, I'm Mark from EndAllDisease.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you learned lots from it, and we will see you in the next episode.